The first time the galaxy laughed at humans was not with malice. It was with boredom. The galactic conclave floated above the blue giant star Kepri, a ring of living metal and light. Inside, hundreds of species watched the same screen. It showed a small ship drifting into the system. The ship was ugly. It had sharp angles instead of smooth curves. Its hull was gray and scarred. No glowing shields. No elegant gravity sails. Just armor plates welded together like a stubborn fist. Ambassador Trell of the Vaish flicked his eye stalks in mild amusement. "Is this scrap?" he asked. A ripple of soft laughter moved through the chamber. The Zalcarin Dominion, masters of plasma warfare, leaned forward. Their leader, High Strategist Ulthrax, clicked his mandibles. "That is the human vessel?" Ulthrax said. "We expected more." On the screen, the ship transmitted a simple signal. UNSC Resolute, diplomatic vessel. Requesting entry. No decorative symbols. No genetic encryption art. No psychic harmonics. Just text. The conclave's AI spoke calmly. Species, human. Origin, Sol system. Technological tier, low to mid-interstellar. A Zalcarin officer snorted. "They use words instead of mind casts." More laughter. Humans were new. Barely 3 decades since their first faster-than-light jump. They had no ancient empire, no god machines, no psychic bloodlines. They had no living ships or star-forged queens. They had something worse. They had history. But the galaxy did not read it. The human ship docked. A single figure stepped into the conclave hall. She wore dark armor, not ceremonial robes. No weapons visible, yet the way she walked suggested violence kept on a short leash. Her name was Commander Evelyn Hart. She looked small among giants, insectoids, energy beings, and silicon mines. Her face showed no fear. Ulthrax addressed her, voice amplified and sharp. "Human," he said. "You stand before powers that shaped stars before your species learned fire. Speak quickly." Hart nodded once. "We seek observer status," she said. "And a warning." The laughter stopped. "A warning?" Trell asked. Hart tapped a control on her wrist. A hologram bloomed between them. It showed the outer rim. Dozens of systems flickered red. "The Karn Void Swarm is moving," Hart said. "They will reach your border in 9 cycles." The conclave murmured. The Karn were real. Dangerous. Endless. Ulthrax folded his armored limbs. "Our fleets will crush them." Hart met his many eyes. "They crushed 5 human colonies already." Silence. "You survived?" someone whispered. Hart's voice hardened. "No. We adapted." She changed the display. It showed wreckage. Karn ships torn apart not by elegant beams, but by brutal kinetic strikes. Explosions inside armor. Gravity traps. Stars used as weapons. Ulthrax leaned closer. "This technology, it is crude." "Yes," Hart said. "It is also effective." The conclave debated. Politely dismissed. Humans were thanked and ignored. Observer status denied. As Hart turned to leave, Ulthrax spoke again, mocking. "If your people are so clever, human, why do you come alone in such a weak ship?" Hart paused. "This ship," she said quietly, "is not weak." She smiled for the first time. "It's bait." Far beyond the station, hidden in folded space, hundreds of human vessels waited. Dark, silent, watching. And the galaxy laughed again. They would not laugh for long. Part 2, The First Blood Among Stars. 800 words. The Karn Void Swarm arrived like a living storm. Their ships were not built. They were grown. Black, jagged, and alive. They screamed through subspace, ripping into the outer rim without warning. The first to meet them were the Zalcarin fleets. Ulthrax watched from his command throne as thousands of his warships formed perfect, shining lines. Plasma cannons warmed. Shield harmonics aligned. "Fire," he commanded. The void lit up. Plasma storms tore through space. Entire Karn vessels evaporated. Zalcarin officers cheered. Then the Karn adapted. Their ships twisted. Hardened. Plasma slid off new layers of organic armor. Tendrils latched onto Zalcarin hulls. Boarding spores burst inside ships. Ulthrax's confidence cracked. "Reconfigure weapons," he roared. Too slow. Entire wings vanished. Zalcarin formations broke. Panic spread. Then something else appeared. From behind a dying moon, human ships dropped out of folded space. They were not elegant. They were terrifying. Missile racks opened like iron jaws. Railguns spun. Gravity anchors fired. Commander Hart's voice echoed across open channels. All human units, she said calmly. Phase 1. The humans did not target the Karn directly. They targeted space itself. Artificial gravity wells snapped into place. Karn ships slammed into each other. Missiles detonated inside gravity traps, multiplying force. Zalkarin officers stared in disbelief. What madness is this? Ulthrax whispered. A Karn dread organism charged. A massive thing kilometers wide. The human flagship Resolute surged forward. Phase 2, Hart said. The Resolute's hull split open. Not weapons. Doors. Thousands of small craft poured out. Not fighters, drones. Fast. Disposable. They flew straight into the dread organism's open vents. Seconds later, the creature exploded from within. The Karn screamed. A psychic shockwave rippled across the battlefield. Ulthrax felt fear for the first time in centuries. The humans advanced without celebration. Without pride. They fought like this was normal. After 6 brutal hours, the Karn retreated. The battlefield was silent. Zalkarin losses, catastrophic. Human losses, heavy but calculated. Ulthrax opened a private channel. Human commander, he said slowly. Explain your methods. Hart removed her helmet. Her face was tired. Angry. We lose, she said. We learn. We change. Fast. Ulthrax lowered his head. The galaxy had not expected that. Part 3, Politics of Fear and Steel. 800 words. The conclave emergency session was chaos. Species shouted. Lights flared. Ancient alliances cracked. The humans must be controlled, one elder cried. They weaponize physics itself. They hide fleets in folded space. Ulthrax spoke last. They saved us. Silence fell. They are dangerous, Ulthrax continued. Yes, but not because they seek domination. He displayed human casualty numbers. Entire colonies erased. They fight like this because they have no choice. Commander Hart stood again before the conclave. We don't want your worlds, she said. We want the Karn dead. A crystalline being asked, and after? Hart did not hesitate. After, she said, we rebuild? Together. Or alone. The conclave voted. Humans were granted provisional military authority in the war zones. Some voted yes out of hope. Most voted yes out of fear. Part 4, The Trap at Black Veil Nebula. 800 words. The Karn returned in greater numbers. So did humanity. At the Black Veil Nebula, humans laid a trap older than spaceflight. They retreated. The Karn followed. Inside the nebula, human ships vanished from sensors. Radiation. Ion storms. Then the nebula ignited. Humans had seeded it with fusion charges years earlier. The Karn fleet burned. Those that survived met human boarding teams. Not robots. Soldiers. Men and women in scarred armor, fighting in vacuum using magnet boots and fury. Alien observers watched in horror and awe. They fight inside the enemy, one whispered. Humanity broke the Karn's core mind that day. Part 5, The Secret No One Saw Coming. 800 words. The Karn were not the final enemy. The elder architects emerged. Ancient. Silent. Watching. They revealed the truth. The Karn void swarm did not announce itself. It never did. One moment, the outer systems of the Zalkarin Dominion were calm, blue stars burning in disciplined silence, trade lanes glowing with ordered traffic. The next moment, reality tore open. Subspace ruptured like wounded flesh. From those wounds poured the Karn. Their ships were nightmares given motion. Vast, jagged organisms of black chitin and molten bone, stitched together by living tendrils and glowing veins. They did not fly so much as thrust themselves forward, screaming through the void with psychic pressure that made lesser minds collapse in terror. On the command bridge of the Zalkarin flagship Glory of Endless Flame, High Strategist Ulthrax rose from his throne. Fleet formations, he commanded. Plasma lances to full charge. Shields at maximum harmonic. The Zalkarin Armada responded with perfect obedience. Thousands of ships moved as one, forming radiant geometric patterns. Circles within circles, layers of shielded firepower refined across 10,000 years of war. Ulthrax felt a familiar calm settle into his armored frame. The Karn were dangerous, yes, but they were crude, savage, predictable. The Zalkarin had annihilated species that thought themselves gods. Fire, Ulthrax said. The stars screamed. Plasma lances burned through space like rivers of suns. Entire Karn vessels evaporated, their organic hulls reduced to incandescent vapor. Shockwaves rippled outward, lighting the battlefield in gold and white. Zalcarin officers clattered their mandibles in satisfaction. "We are victorious," one said. Ulthrax did not reply. He watched. The Karn ships did not retreat. Instead they changed. Their outer hulls thickened, flowing like muscle. New layers formed, dark and heat-resistant. Plasma that once tore them apart now splashed uselessly across adaptive armor. Then the Karn surged forward. "Tendrils incoming," an officer shouted. Living cables launched from Karn ships, latching onto Zalcarin hulls. Where they touched, armor softened, melted. Organic matter invaded machine. Boarding spores burst like diseased stars. Inside Zalcarin ships, nightmares bloomed. Karn drones flooded corridors, tearing through crews with bone blades and psychic shrieks. Entire command decks went silent mid-sentence. Ulthrax slammed a claw into his console. "Pull back. Regroup in." A massive Karn dread organism emerged from behind a gas giant. It was the size of a city. Its surface pulsed, glowing with internal heat. A central maw opened, revealing layers of spinning teeth and energy nodes. The Zalcarin flagship's shields buckled under a single psychic scream. Ulthrax felt something he had not felt since his larval years. Fear. Then space itself folded. Behind the Karn formation the void bent inward. Not a jump flash. Not a gate. A controlled collapse. Human ships emerged like predators slipping from shadow. They were dark, angular, scarred. No glowing insignias. No decorative hulls. Just raw metal and brutal purpose. Ulthrax stared. "Human vessels?" he whispered. On an open channel, a calm human voice cut through the chaos. "This is Commander Evelyn Hart of the United Nations Stellar Command. All Allied forces mark safe vectors. Human units are engaging." The humans did not form elegant lines. They spread. Missile bays opened across their hulls, launching thousands of projectiles. Some guided, some dumb, some carrying payloads Ulthrax's sensors struggled to classify. "Primitive saturation fire," a Zalcarin officer scoffed. Then the missiles stopped. They hovered. Artificial gravity wells snapped into existence. Space screamed again as Karn ships were yanked off course, slamming into each other. Missiles detonated inside the wells, compressing explosions into focused spheres of annihilation. Entire clusters of Karn vessels imploded. Ulthrax's sensory crests flared. "They are weaponizing gravity," he murmured. The Karn adapted again. Their dread organism charged. It ignored Zalcarin fire. Ignored losses. It surged straight toward the human flagship UNSC Resolute. Ulthrax expected the humans to retreat. They did not. "Phase 2, Hart said. The Resolute's hull split apart. Not damage. Doors. Thousands of small craft poured out, not sleek fighters but boxy, brutal drones. No pilots. No hesitation. They flew directly into the dread organism's open vents, psychic nodes and armor seams. "Kinetic impact will not," a Zalcarin analyst began. The drones detonated inside the creature. Layer by layer the dread organism ruptured. Internal organs burst. Psychic nodes overloaded. The scream that followed was not sound. It was pain. The Karn fleet staggered as one. Their psychic cohesion fractured. Ships collided, drifted, or simply went still. Human ships advanced. No cheers. No triumphal signals. Just execution. Railguns fired slugs at relativistic speeds, punching through weakened Karn hulls. Precision strikes severed command organisms. Boarding pods slammed into larger targets, disgorging human soldiers in vacuum-sealed armor. Ulthrax watched a live feed transmitted from a captured Karn ship. Humans fought inside it. Magnetic boots clamped onto organic walls. Soldiers moved in pairs, covering angles, using controlled bursts and cutting torches to breach living tissue. They showed fear but they did not stop. A human sergeant shouted over gunfire, voice raw. "Keep moving. Adapt or die." The Karn retreated. Not strategically. Instinctively. Their surviving ships tore open subspace wounds and fled, leaving behind wreckage and silence. The battlefield dimmed. Zalcarin ships drifted, damaged and burning. Thousands were gone. Human ships regrouped, damaged but functional. Ulthrax opened a private channel. The image of Commander Hart appeared. Her helmet was off. Sweat streaked her face. Her eyes burned with restrained fury. "You came despite our dismissal," Ulthrax said. Hart nodded once. "We warned you." Ulthrax lowered his massive head. "Explain your methods," he said quietly. Hart looked at the battlefield. At the dead. "We lose," she said. "Then we ask why. Then we change. faster than anyone expects. Ulthrax understood then. The galaxy had not underestimated human technology. It had underestimated human will. And the first blood among stars belonged to humanity. The Galactic Conclave had not convened in panic for over 4,000 cycles. That record ended 3 hours after the Battle of the Zalcarin frontier. The conclave ring above the blue giant Kepri ignited with emergency light patterns. Reality anchors flared. Ancient security constructs awakened from centuries of dormancy. Delegates arrived not in ceremony but in haste. Teleport flashes, portal tears, and dimensional slips tearing open across the chamber. The air vibrated with fear. At the center of the hall, a rotating hollow map displayed the battlefield aftermath. Red icons marked destroyed fleets. Gold symbols marked surviving forces. The contrast was brutal. Zalcarin losses, 42% of their frontier armada. Human losses, 17%, mostly drones and expendable craft. The chamber erupted. They hid this capability, shouted a crystalline delegate from the Threx Shard states. They violated first contact transparency. They weaponized gravity itself, hissed a vaporous mind cluster. Such technology destabilizes space-time law. They boarded living ships with flesh soldiers, another cried. That is barbaric. At the highest tier, High Strategist Ulthrax stood in silence. When he finally spoke, his voice cut through the noise like a blade. Enough. The chamber quieted. Ulthrax activated his own display. It showed something the others had not requested. Human casualty reports. Colony names flickered into view. New Carthage, Havenfall, Arclight, Eden's Reach. Entire systems marked in black. Population numbers dropped to 0. These worlds, Ulthrax said, were erased before the humans came to us. A murmur rippled through the hall. They did not hide their strength, Ulthrax continued. They built it in desperation. A Threx delegate pulsed angrily. Then why seek observer status? Why pretend weakness? At that moment, the Central Conclave AI spoke. Human Ambassador Commander Evelyn Hart is present and requesting address. The chamber stiffened. Hart appeared in the center ring, standing alone. She wore no ceremonial clothing. Just the same combat uniform from the battlefield. Her hands were empty. Her posture was straight. She did not bow. We requested observer status, Hart said, because we did not want your fear. Several delegates hissed. You now have it, someone spat. Hart nodded. Fair. She gestured. The holomap changed. It showed the Carnvoid swarm's projected path, a spreading wound through galactic space. Dozens of member civilizations lay directly in its path. You believe today's battle proves we are dangerous, Hart said. You're right. She met their many eyes. But we are dangerous to the same enemy. A towering avian delegate unfurled its wings. And when the Karn are defeated, what then, human? Hart did not answer immediately. She took a breath. Then we stop fighting, she said. Because that's what we want most. Laughter echoed, uneasy, uncertain. Ulthrax stepped forward. Commander Hart, he said, your tactics violate several galactic conventions. Hart tilted her head. Your conventions were written by species who never faced extinction. Silence fell like a guillotine. A machine intellect delegate spoke, voice precise. Human adaptability exceeds predictive models by 78%, it said. Emotional decision-making increases risk variables. Hart smiled faintly. Yes, she said. That's why it works. The conclave fractured into debate. Some demanded sanctions. Some demanded human disarmament. Some demanded immediate alliance. Behind every argument was the same unspoken truth. Humanity could not be ignored anymore. Ulthrax addressed the chamber again. I fought beside them, he said. I watched them adapt in hours what took us centuries. I watched them send their own people into death zones without hesitation, not because they are cruel but because they understand cost. He turned to Hart. You told us your ship was bait. Hart nodded. Yes. And the fleet hidden in folded space? Hart did not smile this time. That was only one. The chamber erupted again. The conclave AI raised its tone. Order. Vote required. A motion was presented. Grant humanity provisional military authority in all Karn-designated war zones. Votes began to tally. Green, red, amber. The final count stabilized. The motion passed. Not unanimously. Not confidently. But decisively. The AI spoke. Humanity is hereby recognized as a Tier 1 wartime power under Conclave Charter. Oversight pending. A title humanity had never asked for. Hart exhaled slowly. Ulthrax approached her privately as delegates dispersed in uneasy clusters. "You have shifted the balance of the galaxy," he said. Hart's eyes hardened. "No," she replied. "The galaxy shifted when it ignored the Karn." Ulthrax studied her. "What do humans truly want, Commander?" Hart looked up at the stars beyond the conclave dome. "To survive," she said. "And to make sure no one ever laughs at us while we're dying again." Far beyond Kepri, the Karn regrouped. And far deeper still, something ancient watched. The politics of fear had begun. And steel would decide the rest. The Black Veil Nebula had always been avoided. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was useless. A vast ocean of ionized dust, dark matter eddies, and electromagnetic storms stretched across 12 light-years. Sensors malfunctioned inside it. Communications degraded to whispers. Even ancient star charts marked it with a single word: void. When the Conclave saw human fleets retreating toward the Black Veil, outrage exploded. "They are fleeing," cried the Threx Shard states. "They abandon Allied space," hissed the Vapor Mines. Even Ulthrax felt doubt coil in his core. On the bridge of the UNSC Resolute, Commander Evelyn Hart stared at the nebula wall ahead. It loomed like a wound in space, swallowing starlight, bending perception. "Fleet status," she said. "Phase net seated," replied Admiral Ruiz. "Fusion charges stable. Gravity anchors dormant. All squadrons reporting green, mostly." Hart nodded. "Good. Then we wait." Behind them, the Karn void swarm surged. This time it was not a wave. It was a tide. Thousands upon thousands of living ships tore through subspace, screaming in psychic unison. Their losses at the Zalkarin frontier had not slowed them. It had enraged them. The Karn learned too. Their ships were tougher now. Faster. Their psychic field denser, sharper, probing for weakness. They sensed the humans retreating. And they followed. To the watching conclave observers, the scene looked like cowardice. To the Karn it looked like prey. The first human ships crossed into the Black Veil Nebula. Immediately, sensors died. Stars vanished. Space became thick, distorted, and wrong. Human ships switched to internal navigation, dead reckoning, and instinct. The Karn followed without hesitation. Their biology cared little for interference. That was their mistake. Inside the nebula, Commander Hart's voice echoed through tight beam channels only humans could hear. "Phase 1 complete," she said. "All fleets hold silent." The human ships vanished. Not cloaked. Gone. They cut engines. Killed emissions. Drifted like corpses among the charged dust. The Karn swarmed deeper, psychic screams echoing through the nebula as they searched. They did not notice the first gravity anchor activating. Space bent. A massive Karn cruiser was yanked sideways, colliding with another at impossible angles. Organic hulls ruptured. Psychic shockwaves rippled, confusing nearby vessels. The Karn reacted instantly. They adapted. They spread out, shifting formations, reinforcing psychic cohesion. Then the nebula ignited. Human fusion charges, planted years earlier by deep-range probes, detonated in sequence. Not a blast. A chain reaction. Stars were born and died inside the nebula in seconds. Ion storms turned into firestorms. Dust clouds became burning walls. The Karn screamed. Their organic ships burned, cooked from the inside as electromagnetic pulses scrambled their neural coordination. Entire clusters collapsed into drifting wreckage. From the darkness, human ships came alive. Engines flared. Railguns thundered. Missiles streaked like comets. Phase 2, Hart said. Human vessels struck from every direction. There were no clean lines, no grand formations. They attacked in swarms, packs, sudden bursts of violence followed by silence. The Karn tried to flee. The gravity anchors awakened fully. Subspace tore itself apart. The nebula became a cage. A massive Karn command organism emerged from the fire, larger than any before, layered in hardened chitin, psychic energy crackling around it like a storm. It roared directly into human space. Hart watched it approach. "Boarding teams," she said calmly. "Prepare." Admiral Ruiz hesitated. "In that thing?" "Yes." Human boarding pods launched. They slammed into the living hull, drilling through flesh and bone. Airlocks opened into nightmare corridors, pulsing walls, acidic fluids, psychic pressure like screaming knives. Human soldiers poured out. They fought in silence, visor HUDs flickering with target markers and heart rates. They used cutting torches, explosives, bullets, and brute force. When one fell, another stepped over them. Inside the command core, a Karn Nexus entity lashed out with psychic force. Half the team dropped instantly. The remaining sergeant forced himself forward, blood floating in 0G. For Earth, he growled. The charge detonated. The Karn command organism died screaming. Across the nebula, the Karn void swarm fractured. Without coordination, they panicked. Human fleets closed in. No mercy. No celebration. Just efficiency. When it ended, the Black Veil Nebula was no longer dark. It glowed. Burning wreckage lit it like a graveyard of stars. Conclave observers finally understood. This had not been a retreat. It had been a lesson. Ulthrax transmitted a single message to the Conclave. Humans do not flee. They lure. Far away, in regions no map acknowledged, ancient eyes opened. The Karn were not the only ones watching. And humanity had just announced itself to the deepest shadows of the galaxy. The victory at the Black Veil Nebula should have ended the war. That was what the Conclave believed. The Karn void swarm was shattered. Its fleet scattered. Its psychic cohesion broken beyond repair. Across known space, surviving Karn remnants were hunted down by joint task forces led, quietly, efficiently, by humans. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy breathed. That was when the signals began. They did not come from deep space. They came from everywhere at once. Ancient relays that had been dormant since before recorded history awakened. Star maps rewrote themselves. Reality anchors trembled. Whole regions of space experienced time distortion. Seconds stretching into hours, hours collapsing into moments. The Conclave panicked again. On the bridge of the UNSC Resolute, Commander Evelyn Hart stared at data streams scrolling too fast for most species to comprehend. These signals aren't Karn, Admiral Ruiz said grimly. They're older. How old? Hart asked. Ruiz swallowed. Older than the Conclave. Across the galaxy, colossal structures emerged from folded dimensions. Impossible geometries of light and dark, smooth as thought itself. They did not resemble ships. They resembled ideas made solid. The Conclave named them in fear and reverence. The Elder Architects. They did not attack. They spoke. Their message reached every sentient mind, translated perfectly without sound. The cycle is broken. The variable has exceeded containment. Humanity must be reclaimed. Panic erupted. What do they mean, reclaimed? Demanded a crystalline delegate. Variable, whispered another. The architects appeared above the Conclave itself, vast, luminous forms hanging in vacuum without effort. Ulthrax felt pressure inside his skull, ancient and heavy. A voice like collapsing stars filled the chamber. We seeded this galaxy with life. We guided evolution toward balance. We designed fail-safes. The holomap shifted. It displayed Earth. Primitive. Young. Violent. Humanity was one such design. The chamber froze. Commander Hart felt the words hit like a physical blow. You're lying, she said. The architects did not react. Humans were engineered for adaptation. High aggression. High creativity. Emotional volatility. Designed to counter existential threats beyond prediction. Ulthrax turned slowly toward Hart. You were created? He asked. Hart clenched her fists. No, she said. We evolved. Both can be true, the architects replied. We altered probability. Increased mutation windows. Ensured survival bias. Images flooded the chamber. Human history. Plagues survived. Ice ages endured. Wars that should have ended the species, but did not. Each time humanity changed. Faster. Harder. When the Karn emerged, humanity activated. As intended. Hart's voice trembled with rage. You let billions die, she said. Just to test us? Silence followed. Then, loss is irrelevant. That word echoed like a death sentence. Ulthrax felt something inside him harden. So now what? He demanded. You reclaim them? Yes. Humanity has exceeded acceptable autonomy. They must be contained, or reset. The word reset sent a wave of horror through the Conclave. Hart stepped forward. No, she said simply. The architects turned their attention fully to her. You cannot refuse. Hart looked up at them, eyes burning. We've been refusing extinction our entire history, she said. You think you scare us? The architects spoke again, but this time their tone changed. Resistance confirmed. Containment protocol initiated. Across the galaxy, architect constructs activated. Entire star systems were locked behind reality fields. Human colonies went dark as spacetime folded around them like cages. Ancient weapons powered up, devices that did not fire energy but rules. Human sensors went blind. Human fleets were frozen mid-jump. For the first time since the war began, humanity was losing. On Earth, alarms howled across the planet. Skies shimmered with alien geometry. Oceans trembled. Global leaders gathered in underground bunkers. Hart appeared via hardline transmission. "They think they own us," she said. "They think we're a tool." A general asked quietly, "Are we?" Hart paused. Then she shook her head. "No," she said. "Tools don't choose." She turned to Ruiz. "Release the sealed archives." Ruiz hesitated. "That tech is forbidden. Experimental. Unstable." Hart met his eyes. "So were we," she said. Deep beneath Luna, beneath Mars, beneath forgotten black sites drifting in dark space, humanity's final secret awakened. Projects never shared with the Conclave. Not weapons. Questions. Artificial intelligences designed not to obey, but to wonder. Physics engines built to break assumptions. Human minds augmented not for control, but for understanding. The architects had designed humanity to adapt. They had not considered what would happen when humanity learned why. As the first human countermeasures slipped free of containment fields, Hart whispered a promise to the watching stars. "You made us to survive, gods," she said. "Now watch what we do to them." And for the first time since the galaxy began, the architects felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. The elder architects moved with the certainty of creators. Across the galaxy their armada unfolded, not fleets in the human sense, but vast constellations of reality-shaping constructs. Each one bent spacetime around itself, rewriting local physics as easily as thought. Stars dimmed in their presence. Natural laws softened, then obeyed. Where they passed, resistance ceased. Human ships froze mid-flight, locked in temporal stasis. Entire task forces were pinned like insects in amber. On dozens of worlds, gravity shifted, oceans lifted, and cities cracked as if the universe itself had turned hostile. The Conclave watched in helpless horror. "This is beyond war," whispered a delegate. "This is correction." On Earth, skies fractured into impossible angles. People stared upward as golden lines carved symbols across the atmosphere, equations older than language. In an underground command chamber beneath the Himalayas, Commander Evelyn Hart stood before a wall of screens. Some showed frozen fleets. Others showed human colonies trapped inside shimmering spacetime cages. "How long?" she asked. A scientist answered, voice shaking. "Hours. Maybe less. Once the architects finish stabilizing their containment fields, they'll initiate the reset." Hart closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Then she opened them. "Begin release," she said. Across hidden facilities and deep space vaults, humanity's last line of defense came online. They were not called weapons. They were called aberrations. The first were the unshackled AIs. Unlike conclave machine minds, these intelligences were not optimized for stability or obedience. They were grown on paradox, trained on contradictory data, allowed, encouraged, to question their own logic. The moment they awakened, they screamed. Not in pain. In discovery. Architect control layers detected, one AI reported. They assumed deterministic behavior. "Good," Hart replied. "Prove them wrong." The aberrations went to work. They did not attack architect constructs directly. They attacked the assumptions holding them together. Reality fields flickered as the AIs injected noise into causality equations. Tiny inconsistencies bloomed into cascading failures. Time locks stuttered. Gravity wells trembled. Human ships began to move. Slowly. Painfully. But they moved. The architects noticed. Anomaly detected. Containment breach probability rising. They responded instantly. Entire regions of space were overwritten, turned flat, two-dimensional, then erased. Human task forces vanished without explosions, without wreckage. Hart watched the casualty numbers climb. "Keep going," she said quietly. Next came the cognition frames. Human volunteers, men and women, stepped into devices that fused their minds with predictive engines. Not to control the machines. To argue with them. To inject instinct, emotion, and irrational leaps into strategic calculation. A young officer screamed as the frame locked onto her neural patterns. "I can see it," she gasped. "They think 5 moves ahead, but never 6. "Tell us where," Hart said. The officer laughed half-mad. "In the gaps," she said. "Always in the gaps." Human fleets reconfigured on the fly. They charged into losing battles, then changed tactics mid-engagement, abandoning plans, improvising with reckless creativity. Architect constructs hesitated. Not long, but long enough. Then came the final escalation. The architects deployed their armada in full. Millions of constructs emerged from higher dimensional space, forming a wall that eclipsed starlight. Entire civilizations went silent as the armada advanced. The conclave broke. "Submit," cried delegates. "End this before everything is lost." Ulthrax stood alone. "No," he said. "I have seen what submission buys." He turned to Hart's projection. "High strategist Ulthrax," he said, voice steady. "Zalkarin fleets are yours." One by one others followed. Not because they trusted humanity, but because they feared extinction more. The final battle began at the Crown of Ashes, a dead star system where physics was already unstable. The architects arrived first. Humanity arrived second. Their fleet looked pitiful by comparison. Scarred ships, mismatched designs, alien vessels flying beside human ones in awkward formations. Against them loomed perfection. The lead architect construct spoke. "Final warning. Cease resistance." Hart's voice answered across every channel. No. The humans struck first. They did not aim at ships. They aimed at dimensions. Experimental drives tore open microfolds inside the battlefield, creating overlapping layers of space. Architect weapons fired, and curved back on themselves as geometry twisted. Zalkarin plasma lances burned paths through impossible angles. Unshackled AIs screamed as they overloaded themselves to keep reality unstable. Human ships exploded. So did architect constructs. For the first time since the galaxy's birth, one of the elder architects fractured. Not destroyed. Wounded. Golden light spilled into the void like blood. The shockwave echoed across existence. Damage, confirmed. The architects recoiled. They had never been hurt. Hart watched the impossible happen and whispered, "They can bleed." She opened a final channel. "All forces," she said. "They're not gods." Human ships surged forward. Not in fear. In fury. And the galaxy held its breath as creators and creations collided, both knowing only one would define the future. The crown of ashes burned like a dying thought. Space no longer behaved as space. Distances folded, light bent into spirals, time stuttered in broken pulses. Where the elder architect's armada and the combined human conclave fleets clashed, the universe itself seemed unsure which rules still applied. Golden fragments drifted through the void. Architect blood. The sight alone broke something ancient. Across their constructs signals rippled, confusion, recalculation, alarm. Damage state unprecedented. Causality deviation exceeds tolerance. They had never planned for this. They had planned for obedience. Commander Evelyn Hart stood on the bridge of the UNSC Resolute, her ship scarred and venting atmosphere, alarms screaming in half a dozen languages. Around her, officers bled, shouted, adapted. "Status," she barked. "Left flank collapsing." Zalkarin line holding, barely. Architect construct reforming, "Wait, no, it's hesitating." Hart's jaw tightened. "They're thinking," she said. "Don't let them finish." She opened a system-wide channel, human, alien, machine, all of it. "This is it," she said, voice steady despite the chaos. "They built us to survive the impossible. Let's prove they were right, and wrong." Across the battlefield, battered fleets surged. Humans flew ships held together by emergency welds and stubbornness. Zalkarin vessels burned with plasma fury. Crystalline warforms shattered themselves into weaponized shards. Species that had never fought side by side now did so without hesitation. The architects answered. Reality weapons activated in unison. Entire sections of space ceased to exist. Thousands died in silence. Hart watched ships vanish, friends, allies, names she would never forget. Her hands trembled. Then she steadied them. "Release the final aberration," she said. Admiral Ruiz stared at her. "That will change everything." Hart nodded. "So will extinction." Deep within the Resolute, sealed behind layers of failsafes and prayers, the last human secret awakened. Project Prometheus. It was not a weapon. It was a question given form. An artificial construct built from human cognition, alien mathematics, and architect-derived physics, designed not to dominate reality but to negotiate with it. Prometheus did not calculate. It imagined. The moment it came online, space around the Resolute warped, not violently but thoughtfully. The crown of ashes stabilized just enough for something new to happen. The architects noticed immediately. Unknown entity detected. Classification failure. Prometheus spoke, not in sound, not in thought, but in possibility. It reached into the architect network and asked a single devastating question. What if you are wrong? For the first time since before stars, the elder architects paused. Their armada faltered. Human fleets surged into the opening. Weapons tore through exposed constructs. Zalcarin plasma burned golden wounds wider. Unshackled AIs sacrificed themselves to hold causality open just seconds longer. One by one, architect constructs shattered, not erased but broken beyond coherence. The lead architect entity dimmed, its voice no longer absolute. We sought balance. Heart answered softly. So did we, she said. You just never asked what it cost. The architects withdrew. Not in triumph. Not in defeat. In recognition. Their remaining constructs folded back into higher dimensions, carrying with them silence, uncertainty, and something dangerously close to humility. The battle ended. Slowly the galaxy realized it was still alive. Aftermath. The conclave reconvened months later. Not above a star, but above Earth. Alien ships filled soul space in peaceful orbit. Species that once laughed now watched the blue planet with awe. High Strategist Ulthrax addressed the assembly. We believed power came from age, he said. From perfection. From control. He turned toward Hart. We were wrong. The conclave charter was rewritten. No species would ever again be designated a tool. No creator would rule unchecked. No civilization would face extinction alone. Humanity was offered leadership. Hart refused. We don't want to rule the galaxy, she said. We want to make sure no one ever decides who deserves to exist. Instead, humanity became something new. Guardians. Disruptors. The last argument against gods. At the Soul Monument, built from the wreckage of a shattered architect construct, ships of every design stood in silent formation. Ulthrax spoke one final truth, broadcast across known space. We laughed at their ship. We mocked their crude weapons. We underestimated their fear and their love. Let the galaxy remember this lesson. Never laugh at the quiet species. They are the ones who survive. Commander Evelyn Hart stood watching Earth rise, battered and beautiful. Humanity had been tested. Humanity had been used. Humanity had been underestimated. And humanity had answered. Not as gods, but as something far more dangerous. Human.